Good morning. Learning as a chutz for Shleima Filana Chaya Baserach, and for Michal Bas. What was the other name?
Yeah, Basimcha.
Basimcha.
I think everything is okay now because she just had a baby.
Oh,
Yeah.
is it was something it was difficult at B'Shas Ma'isa at the time.
Well, it was 5 weeks early and she's in her mid-50s.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of
So,
a.
and the baby's okay as far as you
So
know.
far, Baruch Hashem, everything looks okay.
Yeah, it's
As
good.
far as I know, yeah. No.
Okay. Zok the Mishnah. We're on Daf Mem Daled Amud Beis by the Mishnah. 5 lines from the bottom. Haparim va'elim va'kvasim ein ma'akvin zeh. As we're going to see, these are talking about the parim and elim and kvasim of musafim. They come together with extra karbanos that are brought on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tov. We're going to see exactly which ones we're referring to. But these parim and elim and kvasim are not ma'ak of one another. It means if you can only bring the parim, you bring the parim, you don't bring the elim, and so on. Shimon says it's separate din. If a person had enough money to buy, let's say you were required to bring 7 parim. That was what the Musaf required. But there wasn't enough money. If he gets all 7 parim, he's not going to have any money left to bring the nesachim that go along with the parim. Yavi par echad u'nesachim. He should just bring however many parim he could bring with the nesachim, and not bring. He should allocate his money to make sure that any parim he brings should be with their nesachim. He shouldn't spend it on getting a bunch of parim and neglecting the nesachim, but rather he should get each par should be a full par together with the nesachim. And don't just spend all the money on parim and not have anything left over for nesachim. Okay. So back to the first end of the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said, "Haparim va'elim va'kvasim ein ma'akvin zeh." The parim and elim and kvasim of musafim are not ma'ak of one another. Hani parim kvasim dehecha. Which parim and kvasim and elim are we talking about? Elim or the chag. If you say it's the musafim of sukkis, kimishbatim ksibu. It says on the psukim of the musafim of the parim of sukkos. It says kamishpat and kamishpatam, right? And menchasim v'niskein laparim le'elim lakvasim kamisparim kamishpat, and menchasim v'niskein laparim le'elim lakvasim kamisparim kamishpatam. So mishpat is a lashon of ikov. It's a lashon that says that this thing is not optional. So how could you say that it's not ma'akev?
Yo, what are
Uh,
we up to?
We're right at the bottom of Mem Daled Amud Beis. So the Mishnah had said that haparim va'elim va'kvasim ein ma'akev zeh, that they're not ma'akev one another. So we're saying if this is talking about the parim and elim of sukkahs, it says kamishpatim that they are ma'akev. Ella the Rosh Chodesh v'atzeres. It's not talking about of Chag, but rather it's talking about where it says the Legabi Rosh Chodesh and Shuas, the Chumash HaPikudim. And it's talking about the Parim and Elim of Chumash Pikudim. So as we're going to see, and this is going to be like the next Amid or Blot really, there are 2 separate sets of Karbanos that are brought on Shuas. One is the standard of the standard musaf of Shavuos as a Yom Tov, where it says that you bring 2 parim and 1 ayil and um, 1 ayil and what is it? And shiva kvasim, and that's brought in I think that's the one in Chumash HaPikudim, which is in Bamidbar. That I think that's in Parshas Pinchas. No, I'm sorry. That's not the standard one. The standard one is in Vayikra and Emor. Is that right? No, I got it wrong. I was right the first time. Rosh Chachechem in Parshas Pinchas it lists all the Yom Tovim and it says what musafim you bring, and that is a standard. And both of them have Shiva Kvasim. The only difference, as we're going to see, is between them is on Shavuos. There's, in addition to the Shiva Kvasim, there's Shnei Parim and one Ayil, and and then there's a separate parsha where we say there's another Shiva Kvasim together with one par and Shtei Elim that's brought dafka on Shavuos together with the Shtei Halechem. That's in the Parshas Emor where we have the discussion of the specific Shavuos set of korbanos. So now the Gemara is talking about the one from Bamidbar, the standard musaf that's brought. So it's talking about the of Rish Chodesh that you bring Parim and Elim, and the Parim and Elim of musaf of Chag HaShavuos. We don't say any of the other Yom Tovim; those are not possible candidates to be who the Mishnah is talking about, because the Mishnah says Parim and Elim, and all of those only have one ayil; they don't have two ayilim, so can't be talking about them. So we're saying when the Mishnah says that the Parim and Elim are not ma'akav one another, must be talking about of Shavuos and Rosh Chodesh. Saktima, Elim deheicha. What ayil are we talking about? Idahanu. If we're talking about from Rosh Chodesh or Shavuos, the ayilu, they only have one ayil. Ida atzeres to Taris Kaidim, and if you right, because all of the standard musaf, like we just said, all the other Yom Tovim, the standard musaf is just one ayil. Ida atzeres to Taris Kaidim, and if it's talking about the unusual, the second, I shouldn't say second, but the alternative obligation, the other obligation on Shavuos of bringing Shiva Kvasim together with one par and two elim, Havaya Ksebahu. It says a lashon of Havaya. Havaya, you, that's mashma, right? The pasuk says, "Vikraftam al lechem." This is again this is the Shtei Halechem karbanos. Shivas Kvasim Tmim, Bnei Shanu Par Ben Bakar Echad V'Ayilim Shtam. You, Oil Hashem. Whenever we say you, that means it's ma'akev. So, which one are we talking about when we say that the not ma'akev zeh? Like we said, the Mishnah can't be talking about something that's only one. The Mishnah says elim, so it can't be talking about something which is only one ayil. And the one thing that has avatzaris, that has two elim, which the Mishnah could be talking about, it says you, which means that it's ma'akev. So no, it is talking about this one that says you. Lo elam the Torah's kainim ma'akvi leil ayil the chumash habikudim leil ayil the chumash habikudim ma'akavu le'elam the Torah's kainim. It doesn't mean that you have to have all of the elam, all of the rams of that are mentioned in this special carbon of Shavuos. That there, if you don't have both of the elam, then you don't bring any. What it means to say is that if you don't have the elam of the special carbon that's brought on Torah's kainim, that's brought together with the Shtei HaLechem, doesn't mean that you shouldn't bring the ayil of the regular musaf. You bring whatever you have, as far as the different groups of karbanos.
What about the fact this is Havaya?
So Havaya just refers to that the ayil itself, the two elim of Torah's Kayanim, if you're missing one of them, you don't bring the other. But if you don't have any of the elim, let's say, you still bring the other ayil for the carbon, or vice versa. If you don't have for these two, you still bring the one. If you don't have this for that one, you have. Let's say you only have two. You bring the two. I don't know which one will come first, but you bring the one for this that goes with the Shtei HaLechem, and even though that means you're not going to be able to bring the regular musaf ayil. The Gemara is going to ask. How could this be that we say the parim and the elam are not ma'akev one another. By the parim, it means that they're not ma'akev, um, not just not just connected one another, but even within each other. That means if you don't have the two parim, you don't bring any of them. But elam dahachu delay makvi. But elam it says yiu, so it means they are ma'akev one another within each set. It just means they're not ma'akev one set to the other set, but inu ma'akvi. But like we said, you says that they are ma'akev. So the Mishnah is not talking about the same things. Our Mishnah says parim and elim, but are not ma'akev, but they're referencing different topics when they say they're not ma'akev. So chayra, it's schwer to say that the Mishnah has two things in mind. No, we can say that the Mishnah is referencing different things. It's not a problem. Itaka is one is talking about legabi the two sets of karbanos are not ma'ak of one another. The parim of the elim of the two sets of karbanos are not ma'ak of one another. But enachanami within the elim of the shtei lechem they are ma'akev. And parim it means the parim themselves are not ma'akev one another. Not there's no reference to them being ma'akev that we don't even need to say that now ma'akev that one set connected the others. Now we're going to start quoting on this blot on this amud a number of psukim from Sefer Yecheskel. In Sefer Yecheskel, it describes the karbanos that were brought on Rosh Chodesh and Nisan, but it describes them all inaccurately. And the Gemara is going to keep on asking, why are these differences between the way it's described in Yecheskel with what we have in our Chumash? So Zak the pasuk in Yecheskel, B'yayim HaChodesh par ben bakar tmimim b'sheshes kvasim v'ayil tmimim yiu. Par matam alayma. What is the Torah saying? Par. Levishanem Torah parim. The Torah says two parim. Why is it saying one par? It's coming to tell you that even if he doesn't have two, he brings just one. So this is a limud to tell you that par is not, that the parim are not ma'akev of one another. Shisha kvasim matamad laim. Where does it say shisha kvasim? We said 7 kvasim. Lefisha kvasim b'Torah shiva. Minam shalem matzah shiva. Yavi shisha. How do we know that by the kvasim? That if he doesn't have all 7, he just brings 6. Tamad laim is shisha. Minam shalem matzah shisha yavi chamisha. Chamisha yavi arba yavi shloisha yavi shnaim. Bafilu echad. Even if he only has enough money for just one keves, he brings that. It's not ma'akev that he doesn't have all of them. He should bring for the kvasim as he has, as they have, the amount of money that they have available to. That's what they should get. Once we say kasher tasik that he should bring as much as he could afford, then what do we have to say shiva to tell you even if he doesn't have the full shiva? The Gemara says that it's coming to tell you don't think it's kasher yasig that it's optional. You should bring as much as you feel like. No, you have to bring whatever to the best of your ability. You have to bring as much as you have. So this is a strange thing. What do you mean? We just said it's not ma'ak of one another. So now we're asking. So Gemara's asking, how do you know that you have that if they have them all, they have enough money to get all of them. They have to get the shiva kvasim and the parim. So you tells you that they have to do it. That then it's not before we're talking about where they only had some of them, that that all of them you're gonna have to do both the kvasim as well as the parim. You're gonna have to do all of them if you have the money available. So the pasuk says Vayter in Yecheskel, Kayamar Hashem Elikim, Berishon be'echad lachodesh, on the first day of the month, that means on the first day of Nisan, Tikach par ben bakar tamim, you should take a par, v'chatas, v'chitesa es hamikdash, chatas, v'chitesa es hamikdash, and you'll cleanse the mikdash, meaning from the averis of bringing karbanis be tuma. In fact, the Gemara chatas oilahu. This par is not a chatas; it's an oila. Why is it referred to as a chitesas hamikdash? Rav Yochanan Pasha zu Eliyahu asid l'darsha. Yochanan said that we're going to have to wait for Eliyahu Hanavi to explain how Yecheskel could call what the Torah describes as an oila, as a chatas. Rabashi Amar miluam hikrivu b'mei Ezra. Rabashi says these parim are not the regular parim of the Musafim of Rosh Chodesh, but rather these are just like we had on the first day of Nisan in the Midbar. There were miluim that were brought by the Nesiim, not was it by the Nesiim? I think it was brought by Aaron and Moshe. So the miluim had chatas, parim that were brought as a chatas. This is also, they made a new set of miluim when Ezra rebuilt, when they came back to Eretz Yisrael, to the Beis HaMikdash. He answered the stira that in Yecheskel it's called a chatas because it's he said that you're going to have to wait for Eliyahu to explain it. He says the answer, like we said, that it's talking about the miluim rather than the par of the musaf of Rosh Chodesh. He said back to him, you know what? You're saying a good pshat. You've assuaged my concern, and you should have peace of mind, just like you gave me peace of mind. Yecheskel, another pasuk in Yecheskel, v'chol nevelu treifa min ha'oifa min ha'behema lo yochlu ha'koyanim. Any nevela, any animal that was not properly shechted, and treifa, any animal that was going to die, we're not allowed to eat. From the oif and the behema, you shouldn't eat it. The kohanim should not eat it. Kohanim udolei eichlu. What is it saying in Yecheskel? The kohanim can't eat nevelas and treifas. Yisrael achli, but Yisrael could eat nevelas and treifas. And Rabbi Yochanan passes Eliyahu asid l'darsha. Again, Rabbi Yochanan said Eliyahu is going to have to explain this. Ravina Amar kohanim etzrichalei. No, we're saying kohanim because we might think kohanim are mutter in nevelas and treifas. Sakadei dechamina hoyel ve'ishtri malika legabayu. Since malika is allowed, when they do malika in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kehanim are allowed to eat the ifis. Tishtri nami nevelu treifa. Malika is it's under other circumstances not a kosher shchita. So since we allow it for them, maybe we'll also allow a regular nevelu treifa by chulin, which is also the malika would be a nevela in other circumstances. Maybe they could always eat nevelas and treifas as well. Kamash malon. So that's what we have to say by the kohanim, that they're also nevelas and treifas. V'chein tasa b'shiva b'chodesh meish shuga umipesi. And this is what you should do on the 7th day of the month from a person who is who made a mistake, umipesi, or someone who was a fool, and he brought tuma into the Beis HaMikdash. And you should bring like this to be mechaper on the tumah and the bayis. Shiva. What is this referring to? What carbon was brought on the 7th day of Nisan? Rav Yochanan elu shiva shvatim. So he says this is not a reference to any kind of musaf. It's talking about something else. It's talking about the paralim davish al tzibur. Elu shiva shvatim shechatu. Paralim davish al tzibur is where there was a psak that from Sanhedrin that something that was aser is mutter, and that people did it. So you bring a param davish tzipah. So Rabbi Yochanan says it's coming to tell you if it's not referring to the 7th day, but rather Shiva Shvatim did a chait, even avapisha ein rubashal kal. Even though we understand param davish tzipah, you have to have roiv of the tzibur. If you have Shiva Shvatim, even though they're not roiv of the population of Bnei Yisrael, you still have a din of par and davar shel tziva. Chodesh, it says, "V'chinan shiva b'chodesh." So what does the chodesh mean? If it's not talking about the seventh day of the month, it means imchadshu v'yamru chelev mutter. If they said a chiddush, if they said something which is incorrect, the chelev is mutter. Me'ishugu mipasi. What about that says me'ishu? It means it has to be a psak from the Sanhedrin. Me'ishugu pasi, from a person who does a mistake and from a fool. Has to be a person that it's not just enough that they made the psak. Someone has to follow the psak and do the ma'isa. For example, they said that chelev is mutter, and someone went ahead and ate chelev. Amr Rav Yehuda Marav. Zachar Oisa Ish Letoiv, Chanina ben Chizkiya Shmoi. We have to remember Chanina ben Chizkiya Shel Malehu Nigna Sefer Yecheskel. If not for his answers of all these steers between Yecheskel and the Torah, we would have to put Sefer Yecheskel into Gniza because we wouldn't have been able to understand it. Davar of Saiser Divrei Torah, because the Davar of Yecheskel was Saiser, our Torah. Ma also, how did he solve this? Hella Sholosh Meis Garvi Shemen. He took 300 containers or measures of oil to keep the lamps burning. V'yashav Aliyah v'darshu. He stood and he went up to the Aliyah and he went through all of these topics and explained it. Amar Reb Shimon. Now we move on to the second topic that was mentioned in the Mishnah on the bottom of the last Amid, that we said Reb Shimon holds if you have enough money, you don't have enough money to bring all Shiva Kvasim or all of the Parim. Let's say you have to bring two Parim, or let's say on Shuas you have to bring three Parim, two from one group and one from the other group. If you don't have enough money to also bring the Nesachim, he says don't just bring them to the Parim without the Nesachim, but rather only bring as many Parim as you can have Nesachim for. You should bring them with their Nesachim rather than bring all the Parim. That was Reb Shimon Shita. Tanarabban, ve'efa lapar, ve'efa la'ayil yasa mincha. This is again in Yecheskel, but now rather than asking a kasha from Yecheskel, we're going to bring the raya to Reb Shimon from the pasuk in Yecheskel. It says you bring an efa for the par, ve'efa for the ayil. Now efa, we know there's different amounts for a par and different amounts for an ayil. Let's say sometimes it's 3 Isroinim or Shalosh Isroinim, or one Isaron, or 2 Isroinim for ayil and one Isaron for a keves. A Isaron is 1/10 of an ephah. So it's very hard to understand. How can you say bring an ephah for the par and the ephah for the ayil? Yasa Michal Akvasim Kasha Tasig Yodei, the amount that he could bring. A shemen hin la ephah, and a shemen hin for the ephah. Shemen, he should bring a hin of shemen for the ephah. How could you say ve'efa lapar, ve'efa la'ayil? They have different amounts of silas. It's not both an ephah. It's not an ephah altogether, and it's not the same. So he learns out his din that we said in the Mishnah from the fact that he says ephah doesn't mean the ephah can mean a specific amount of an ephah, which is 10 esrainim, or it can mean an ephah means the measure. And what's coming to say you should bring the measure, meaning the mincha, the mincha and nesachim of the par, before you bring the second par. You should spend your money to make sure you have the nesachim together with the par. V'imhayu lohem elim merubim lohayu lohen ephas and yavi ayil echad ve'vasa v'yikum kulam b'lo ephas. Same thing as we said by the par. You should do for the ayil. The same thing will apply to the ayil.
Yo, just out this. What sheet does Reb Shimon?
That's in the Mishnah that he says this specific thing that we just said,
Right.
that if you have, let's say $100 and it costs $75 for par. Let's say it costs $50 for par, and it costs $10 for the nesachim that come along with the par. So you have a choice. You get 2 parim, or you can get 1 par and spend $10 on its nesachim. So the Rosh Hashanah says you spend the $50 on 1 par and the $10 on nesachim. You don't bring the second par, rather than spending all your money on parim. You have to bring each par properly rather than bringing a lot of parim without the nesacha. And that's what he learns out from Micheskel. Zok the Mishnah. Now we're going into this this sugya of the shvuos, of the parim and the kvasim, parim elim and kvasim of shvuos. So you have the parsha in Emor, which is the special shavuos karbanis, which is, it says, where does it start? Mimoshveisechem taviu lechem tnufa shnayim shnei soim soilas tiyana chametz yefene bikurim lashem. That's the shtei halechem that you bring on shavuos. The pasuk continues, v'kraftem al lechem shivas kvasim tmimim, 7 lambs, b'nei shana upar ben bakar, a single par, which is not typical, right? All of the musafim of the different Yom Tovim, you bring 2 parim b'nei bakar, right? We read it all the time. So we do par ben bakar echad ve'elim shnayim, which is also different than the standard musafim, which is only 1 ayil. You ayil Hashem u'chasam niskem ishareich v'chayich Hashem. And then it says vasisim sirizim echad lechatas. In addition to that, you bring 2 seirim, 2 goats, a goat, 1 goat. I'm sorry, for chatas uknei kvasim reishana lezevach shlamim. And then you bring the kifsei atzeres. So in addition to the shiva kvasim that you bring, that we said before, that is, I believe in oila, yeah. And then you bring on top of that, you bring the shnei kvasim, there's the kifsei atzeres. Then it says, "You do specifically the kifsei atzeres they get a tnufa together with the lechem that you bring on Shavuos." So let's see the Mishnah. Haparva elim v'kvasim v'asoyer ein ma'akven mes halechem. So on Shavuos, the par, we said there's a single par, and the elim, the 2 elim, and the shiva kvasim, and the soyer, the goat, ein ma'akvan es halechem. They're not ma'akav halechem, v'lei halechem ma'akvam halechem, v'lei halechem ma'akvan. And the lechem is not ma'akav them. If you don't have the lechem, you still bring all of those karbanos, and vice versa. Halechem ma'akav es hakvasim. Now, we said before, the kvasim, this is not the same kvasim, right? We read in the psukim, in the first, in pasuk, where was it? On Pesach Yudches, v'kravdem alechem shivas kvasim tmimim neishana. That's the regular shiva kvasim, or parallels the shiva kvasim of a musaf. But then in pasuk Yudtes, vasisim sirizim echad l'chata shnei kvasim neishana lezevach shlomim. We're talking about now that it's 2 kvasim of zevach shlomim. So, but the lechem is ma'akav the kvasim, the lechem of the shtei of the shtei halechem is ma'akav the kivsei atzeres. Ve'na kvasim ma'akven es halechem. Divrei Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva says the kivsei atzeres are not ma'akav the shtei halechem. Amr Rav Shimon ben Nanas. Rav Shimon ben Nanas disagrees with Rabbi Kiva. Loiki ela kvasim ma'akven es halechem. The 2 kivsei atzeres are ma'akav the lechem. If you don't have the kivsei atzeres, you don't do the shtei halechem. If you don't have the shtei halechem, you still bring the kifsei atzeres. When the Yidden were in the midbar for 40 years, kirvu kvasim b'lo lechem, they were makriv the kvasim of the kifsei atzeres without lechem. There was no shtei halechem in the midbar because the shtei halechem is only applicable with produce from Eretz Yisrael. When you're in the midbar, there's no access to shtei halechem. You can't get the produce, the new produce. Both the Eimer and the shtei halechem were not done in the midbar. They're only done in Eretz Yisrael. So you see that since in the midbar they did the kvasim without the lechem, must be that the lechem is not ma'ak of the kvasim. Avkan yikavu kvasim b'lei lechem. Amr of Shimon. So Rav Shimon said, in this machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and Bananas, halacha kedivrei Bananas. He agrees with the halacha that Bananas said that the shtei halachem is not ma'akav the kivtzei atzeres, aval eina tam kedvarav. But his reason is not. I have a different reason for it. Shechala amar b'chumash hapikudim karev b'midbar. Whatever was brought in chumash hapikudim, meaning in b'midbar, that was brought in the midbar. So the v'chola amar b'taris kainim ain't karev b'midbar. Whatever was brought in Vayikra, meaning the parsha that we just read, was not brought in the midbar. So he says all these karbanos that you're saying were brought without the shtei alechem. That's not true. They weren't brought in the midbar because they were those things that were mentioned there. These special karbanos that were brought on Shavuos, they were not brought in the midbar, just like the lechem wasn't brought in the midbar. So your whole raya that these karbanos that are brought with the shtei alechem were brought on their own in the midbar is not correct. By the way, I just want to notice something that, I'm 54 years old and I just found out something I never knew before. You look, my grandfather, Simcha Sheps, did you remember the old blue Pentateuch? The blue translated Pentateuch? So what are they? It's what is it? Bereshis? What is Bereshis?
Genesis.
Genesis. Then you have Exodus. Then you have
Leviticus.
And then you have Numbers. Why is Numbers? Why is it called Numbers? So it's because we call it Chumash Pikudim. The Pikudim. When the Rebbe Shalom counted the Yidden when he first came at the beginning of Parshas Bamidbar. Ele Pikudim B'nei Yisrael. It's that's the way it's counting. So that's why it's called Numbers, because we call it here Chumash Pikudim. I never knew that. Anyway, I never put it together. I guess I knew all the facts, but I never slopped it together. And Deuteronomy, I still don't know I don't know what Deuteronomy means to be able to say why Devarim is called that.
It's to make people sound smart when they say it.
I know I sound stupid because I can't pronounce it. I don't think anyone really knows how to pronounce it. Mishubo, I've never heard anyone pronounce it, so there's no way for me to know how to pronounce it. In any case, so let's continue with the Mishnah. But when they started being marked of them when they came to Eretz Yisrael. So if that is not the raya that the lechem is not mark of the kvasim, where do I know it from? Because kvasim have the dalit avodas. You do the avodas of a carbon. You do the shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika, and that is mater the keves. So something that has a mater can be mater itself, but the lechem needs to have something else. There's nothing else being mater it, so it cannot be brought. You can't bring the lechem without something that's being mater. But masha'enke and the kvasim, since they have their own mater, built-in mater, they can be brought without the lechem. Okay, you know what? We're going to stop over here because I know Rafal wants to get to shul, and also this is it's a lot of kachim after having been off for a week and a half.